Alright, MA Marignon, turn 61. Got a lot of stuff going on this turn. Alright, nice. We received 10 Astral Gems from Vanheim. That is the trade that we discussed last time. Always nice to see a prompt trade happen. And then we finished Research in Alteration 8. This mostly gets us Will of the Fates. We also got Blood Magic 2. This is mostly for the remote site searching spell, because there's a couple of provinces with out-of-control unrest that I suspect have blood sites. We awaken a sleeper. This is in Bandar Log, and we're planning on using him as a commander for an army down there that we'll probably eventually use against Asphodel or maybe Yis. Our Spectre, who's going to get the Crown of Despair, and then Call the Wild for our wolves. And then speaking of our wolves, I believe this is going to be their battle, since this is a magic phase battle. Yeah, so here we are. Here's our werewolf. We will eventually, hopefully, give some kit. He will do great things for us, and now these wolves are going to try to take out this province defense. It's probably going to fail because wolves are not very good. They don't have great morale, and then when the wolves rout, they rout the werewolf as well. Well, yeah, of course, now that I'm aligning them, no, there they go. I thought maybe we would actually come away with it. So, Phlegra actually, they do seem to invest a decent amount in province defense. I think that if this was against a, more normal, quote, amount of province defense, because, although this looks probably just 10. Let's see, do we actually retreat? Hey, the werewolf retreats. Okay, well, that's at least a consolation. So we may test the other forest, but yeah, I don't really think we're going to get, a whole lot of territory out of our wolf cannon, sadly. At least not against Phlegra, right? In another situation where there's a lot of raiding going back and forth and a lot of provinces being left at one province defense, this can definitely handle one province defense. Or sometimes it can handle 6 province defense, but 10, rarely, if ever. So yeah, our site searching doesn't work out too well, but we do find a mine. Not sure if this also gives us a gem. Maybe double check if I remember. And then we have a whole grab bag of battles, although it does look like unfortunately we bump with Xibalba, and I didn't think I was raiding. I mean, we are kind of all up in their business, and I didn't send them provinces this turn, although I don't think they asked either. But still, I should endeavor to try to be better. Right, this is our problem solver, and there's not much of a problem to solve here, so this is definitely going to work out for us, and a bit overkill. But that's okay, right? Phlegra had been leaving a ton of province defense, and now we, I think, have dissuaded them. And this is maybe we'll also use this kit possibly on knocking out those places that our wolves failed in. But that's a bit close to the front line to be risking all that gear. And then here we are. This is our fort. Okay, it looks like that raiding group decided to hang out. I think we should beat this without too much trouble. We'll see. We're going to lose some knights in all likelihood. But yeah, there's some incinerates. We should be getting some soul slays. Looks like it missed. Wow, or it failed the magic resistance check. Or they succeeded their magic resistance check. There's a guy that failed, and another one. So that does work out for us. We may have lost a knight or two, but that is perfectly acceptable. No, we lose no knights. That's even better. So that is the end of that raiding group. I'm definitely very glad to be rid of them. And then we get attacked in a province. I'm not sure where this is. Okay, this is where our wolves retreated to, which we apparently left no province defense here. Still not 100% sure where this is, but yeah, this is not going to work out for us. And in case there's any confusion, because we have not given any kit yet to this werewolf, although I think, the werewolf would need a lot of kit to come away against this white mage. So let's see if our werewolf nope, he does not manage to retreat again, although apparently one of the wolves, yeah, so great. One wolf survives all of that. Well, we'll see. There could be other battles. So that's an unfortunate end to our first werewolf. And then, yeah, okay, we don't bump. That was a flagrant flag there. So we just ended up fighting in the same province. This is an interesting attack. So just a solo weakened Shadow Seer. Actually, the same commander that we were just using to Soul Slay. So I imagine, yep, there's, Mind Burn. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Xibalba is definitely, they're on the back foot. I don't think they've ever been particularly large. And, of course, they've been relatively small for a little while. So there's a good chance they just don't have Thalm 5. So Mind Burn is like fair enough. Yeah, you know what? This isn't one of the white mages. Some of them have had Rings of Regeneration, in which case, I'd say it's like, this probably isn't even worth the effort. But, with 116 hit points here, Mind Burn just doesn't do that much damage, and like this guy's magic resistance is actually pretty good. So it looks like he's cast a spell on himself to improve it. So like, yeah, 21. The Mind Burns are barely going to go through, and it's not actually that fatiguing of a spell. Well, I say that. It's less fatiguing since this guy's like over level a bit, but yeah, you tend to you don't get that many Mind Burns off. So this Shadow Seer is screwed. And let's just confirm. What? Well, there you go. More fool me. Looks like the Shadow Seer, these are our retreat details. We do not get to find out if the Shadow Seer survived the retreat, but he did somehow manage to survive the white mage and, make his escape off the battlefield at least. Shadow Seers are ethereal, although I don't think it would have mattered all that much since, that white mage had a magic weapon. And then this is a more serious raid from Xibalba. Yeah, with quite a thug. This looks like the fellow that killed the Bronze Colossus. It doesn't look like his kit has changed, which makes sense again. Xibalba, a little low on the resources, but yeah, I think they're going to be able to take out this province defense without too much difficulty. Although anytime you got arrows coming in, unarmored mages, well, we know all about how that can go. So maybe some losses here, but yeah, I think Xibalba's going to come away with it without too much difficulty. So some very nice rating. Wait, no, that's our Shadow Seer. So some rating here. Yeah, they do lose a Camazot to the archers, no doubt. And then they bump into Ulm, sadly. So I think I did give them some information about where Ulm was, but I think Ulm may have some stealthy stuff, or no, I don't think these guys are stealthy. No, I take that back. They are stealthy. So yeah, there's only so much information we can provide. Can't tell them about what I cannot see. That said, this is a lot of casters that this fellow is up against. Yeah, and the imps coming in and the undead being summoned, that's the danger of giving this much kit to a fellow like this. Again, considering that Middle-Age Ulm has forge bonuses, so this is not as expensive as it would be for most nations, but yeah, there you go. Frozen Heart, and he's gone. So definitely a good attempt by Ulm, with a pretty cool chassis. And yeah, again, I don't think there was anything wrong with the kit other than it's just a lot of kit for somebody that's just going to die to a single cast of Frozen Heart. But nicely done by Xibalba, right? They managed to retake the province and take out a raider. So here I was worrying about giving them, information. They don't even need it. Of course, it is sad that thug is dying against Xibalba when it could be dying against Asphodel. So here's our attack on top of another Phlegron fort, but there's no patrolling. I do wonder if Phlegra staled again. They may have bailed on this game. I haven't actually checked. They did stale the previous turn. I don't know if I actually mentioned that in the last video, which is always a bit sad. You never know. Maybe they have something going on, but also they're fighting two people, and I don't think it's going that well. So sometimes people are just like, yeah, okay, that's enough Dominions for me, which I can definitely sympathize with. So that works out for us. We only lose a crossbowman. Glad to not bleed any mages. Then we do catch a battle between Asphodel and Ulm. This is perhaps, nope, not on top of the throne. This looks like some random garbage raiding forward. And this particular tiger is a master of both death and nature magic and has 3 nature gems. So, be careful of tigers always, but especially if they're also spellcasters. And they are just up against some province defense. Although, the chaff from Asphodel, we'll see. There's going to be some trampling, but, this is actually one of the better province defense types. Okay, yeah, so he's using those gems to cast Howl. So I do think this will work out for Asphodel. It's interesting. I've never seen Howl rating before. He HP routes. That is unfortunate. So a little too much chaff, or the chaff maybe died before enough wolves could build up to provide that HP buffer to prevent the overall army rout. And of course, Howl is a very fatiguing spell for a Nature 3 to cast. So I do think he's going to lose this tiger. Maybe. Looks like everybody's too busy with wolves. Maybe this tiger will escape. Oh yeah, of course, because Howl is still active, so the wolves keep coming in. And then they immediately rout. Okay, somebody did manage to go finish him off. Somebody figured it out. Probably about the same time I figured it out. Hey, maybe instead of killing the wolves, we should kill the guy who's generating the wolves. Although, in those heavy infantry's defense, they probably didn't realize that tiger was a spellcaster, right? It's like wolf, tiger, what's the difference? So here we are just raiding forward into a cave. There's a little bit of province defense, but even our third and smallest army should be enough to take out just minimal province defense. And hopefully they can do it without loss. Yes, they do manage to do it without loss. We appreciate that. And then let's see, we caught a battle between Phlegra and Ulm. So, I said maybe Phlegra staled, but of course they have some attacks, so they couldn't have staled. So that is good. I'm glad that they're still playing and still fighting. Let's see, yeah, so white mage and some mage support here. These guys are the ones who immediately jump into a communion, although I don't really see how this guy's going to make it into a communion, so I'm not sure what the mages... I guess since there's no communion master, they just function as normal mages. So that's kind of interesting. I didn't actually realize that. That said, I don't know, level, path 1 mages, sometimes they can do useful stuff, but these guys I think might struggle. Wasn't one of them? No, air, not great. The water one could be doing some frozen heart spamming, so that would be solid. But yeah, in fact, yep, there's a frozen heart. So yeah, but the other guys, not sure what they're doing here, but they don't really need to be here because this white mage is quite powerful on his own. Although there's no kit on him, so Phlegra is probably starting to get down to it in terms of their gems. Or at least that is my guess, but they do at least manage to raid this back, more or less without loss, so that is very nicely done. And then there was a battle between Vanheim and Asphodel in Vanarus's old capital, which has been sown with salt and had the fortress removed. And this just looks like some standard elven raiding against just some province defense. Let's see if this elf has any kit. Yep, he's got the very standard kit, although this guy is a hero. Right, I think we've seen him before. Heroic precision. Not the best trait for these guys to get, although they can spam like lightning bolt and thunderstrike. That will help a bit for that, but I have faith that he can take out that province defense. And he does, so, elves just doing what elves do. And that is good news, because we're worried about Asphodel. Speaking of being worried about people and things, here's the giant Ysian Doomstack moving forward with all of his cap mage recruitment of all time and a lot of sacred recruitment. Yeah, this fort is empty. So yeah, we kind of know which way this conflict is moving, and I definitely do need to reach out to Yis to figure out, is this going to be in our future or is it going somewhere else? And we have some unexpected events, which only ever bring us joy and happiness. Yes, we are invading the Hall of the Mountain King. Yes, there's a troll telling us to not invade, but we will persist. So we'll probably have to issue the invade order again this turn, but that's okay. Our army doesn't really have much to do, except maybe, this is one of our nicer provinces. So that is sad that we lose 2,000 population, and then we'll have to fight off those barbarians. This is more normal. Still hurts. This stuff adds up, but, could be worse. Hey, there you go. It gets canceled out. It must be a province that we've had this for a long time, so who knows? Even with misfortune, sometimes you get lucky, and, more barbarians. Maybe they won't attack, but probably they'll attack. More barbarians, of course. Yeah, we're probably going to need more problem solvers. Although that said, we do have our problem solver, so we will probably try to pre-position her for these barbarians, or at least one of these groups of barbarians, and ensure that we don't actually lose a province. Speaking of losing provinces, we won't lose this completely since we have a fort, but this is one that we've invested 20 province defense in, so we should be able to turn around these barbarians. They don't like range fire. We have enough infantry here. Yeah, there wasn't actually that big of a barbarian attack. I don't know how they managed to kill 2,000 people, but kill them they did. And then let's see, we lose a scout somewhere to Asphodel. I'm not sure where this is actually, but I didn't think we were on one of their forts. This is maybe one of the forts that they recently took, because this is actually being led by a caster. So it doesn't really strike me as a permanent patrol group. Although that said, they might be trying to catch Almish raiders. So yeah, we may have just bumped into a trap that was intended for Ulm. And then we patrol out a Ysian scout, and this is pretty deep inside of our territory. This is near that Enchantress fortress that Phlegra had locked down. So since Phlegra, didn't move last turn, we already had this group in position and still wanted to block them from raiding us, so figured, hey, let's just do a little patrolling, see what we catch. Lo and behold, a Yissian scout. So yeah, maybe Yiss is in our future. Speaking of which, another Yissian scout, and I believe this is the Hall of the Mountain King, so I guess our attack also counted as patrolling, I'm guessing, or we just got lucky with the province defense. I do think this is enough province defense to trigger some patrolling. So like, yeah, we've been catching a lot of scouts from Yiss. We are one of their neighbors, so yeah, but definitely cause for like some concern, or at least some thought. And then unfortunately we lose a scout in Falegra's territory. Not sure where this is, but we have a lot of scouts there, so that's not the end of the world. Our eagles breach that fort that has all the mouflon in it that we're planning on taking with our horror harmonica golem, so we should get him in action next turn. And then in Nazca, the wall's critically damaged. We should breach that next turn. And then we've started breaching walls. Yeah, this is the fort that we just jumped on top of, so that should breach next turn as well. We may just try to storm with our main army, or yeah, it may move on and, you know, we'll just leave something behind. There is a good amount of stuff in here, so I'm not sure we'll be able to keep it locked down so that our horror harmonica golem can show up and handle whatever's inside. And then Abyssia was finally vanquished, so it looks like man moved in and took that last province. And I will catch you guys after the cut. All right. This is the situation and what we're doing about it. First things first, the Falegran War. So we have recracked this fort and we are going to storm immediately. We are moving out our eagle group here, which may be a mistake. I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to get attacked by this fellow here, and I don't really want the eagles to participate in a battle where there's a bunch of horrors being summoned. They would probably mostly survive, but yeah, the eagles are pretty valuable to us, especially because we're super low on air gems right now. And I'm actually not 100% sure. I believe that the repairing happens after battles. I'm assuming that's the case, so that we will actually be able to storm, but I guess we'll find that out next turn. There's also the possibility that we're going to send our third army and try to wipe this guy out. We don't actually have too much in the way of anti-super combatant tech here, so this is perhaps a little dangerous, although if I recall, I don't think this guy has a ton of protection, and our knights are decent at killing, you know, super combatants as long as their protection isn't too high. Yeah, 23, it's not going to be great for our knights, but they can definitely cut through that. And then yeah, we definitely have some spellcasting support here, so I think this should work out. And of course, you know, we may not actually engage this white mage because he may move. And then we're just going to sit on top of this fort, and then we're going to sit on top of Nazca because we've not broken either of these, although I think we'll get the break for both of them next turn. And then also our problem solver is moving, like, yeah, just love these really long arrows like this. This is map move 35, flying at work, and just kind of highlights, you know, the advantages of a chassis like this, because we're not really expecting a lot of resistance here. She should be able to handle, you know, whatever kind of province defense is there. We can see that Falegra has moved out, and it looks like there's a good stack of mages here, so there's a pretty good chance that we're going to have to fight a battle here, that, you know, whatever is inside this fort is going to sally out and then join with this group here. We'll see how that goes. Like I said, we haven't really seen Falegra use a lot of mages, although again, the main thing that I'm concerned about is Earthquake, although that may just be because I'm not thinking of something. And this doesn't really look like a great group to be using Earthquake with, although obviously he could, you know, leave behind the units and then just send forward a couple of mages to mess with us. We are starting to do some forging. Let's see. Yeah, so I think I mentioned this, but we do have the slave matrices now, right? So we can have that turn 1 communion up to get our turn 1 fog warriors up. But of course, we can't actually deliver these to the necessary commanders until we have access to a lab. So, you know, these two armies are going to have to take their chances, at least until they manage to storm these forts. We probably will storm these with the armies. I don't know. We'll see. Partially because, you know, we do need to resupply them on items and things like that. So having access to a lab would be really nice. And then it also somewhat depends on how it goes, right, for our horror harmonica golem storming, right? Like, it's kind of unproven. I think it's going to work, but if it doesn't work, then we're going to be using the armies to storm going forward until we can figure out, you know, a better storm group. We're not going to bother with using the wolf cannon. I think we moved our wolves down, to Bandar. We're just going to cast them in here because, yeah, that's the other thing. So still haven't ended the non-aggression pact with Asphodel yet. We'll probably wait like 1 or maybe 2 more turns before we end it. And then, of course, non-aggression pact 3, so we have to wait 3 more turns after that. So, it's a bit of a balancing act. Phlegra's not yet done, but, they still have some significant forces left. And then, of course, Xibalba, and then, we've not talked with Yiz. So we'd like to get the Yiz situation sorted, although honestly, even if we don't really hear back from Yiz about, a non-aggression pact, we'll probably still attack Asphodel because I think this is going to be the best chance that we get. Because we're trying to get some scouts into position to see Man's attack, but it does look like Ulm has been rolled back somewhat. We don't have full coverage, so we don't know exactly what's going on, and obviously they have somewhat deep pockets, in terms of territory that they can still draw off of. But yeah, this is, we see some flags a little bit deeper in Ulm's territory, and some of the Ulmish flags that were deep in Asphodel's territory have disappeared. Now, of course, in a heavy raiding war, there can be lots of back and forth, and that's not necessarily indicative of, somebody getting trounced. But, we did scry. This is, used to be Naba. Well, I guess it still is Naba, but anyway, it's a capital, and it's relatively empty, right? It's pretty much just the garbage that, patrolled out our scout. And that's like another reason, I'm still trying to figure out. Patrollers are really important, but at the end of the day, like, you can't really prevent your opponent from at least getting some information by scrying. That said, I do think the dome spells will block scrying, but the dome spells aren't 100%. They don't block all spells, and that's a pretty expensive way, like, just to block scrying. So anyway, patrolling, very useful, and if somebody's patrolling heavily and you still want to find out what's going on there, then you can do some scrying, and that's what we've done here. And there's not really much here other than the patrollers. So my suspicion is that, this has been relatively emptied, and of course, Asphodel will have 3 turns to prepare, and I'm sure they will. But since they'll be fighting, 3 other factions on the other side of their border, there isn't going to be a better time. So even if it's not a perfect time for us, we will probably go in. That is also where most of our recruitment is happening along this border. We still, in Bandar, the scales, we have a lot of Dominion here, but it's just taking a second for the scales to flip over. I think they were pretty far off, what we're looking for. At least in Archocephaly, we do have our full scales in there now, and we can, do some proper recruitment. Otherwise, mostly just flagellants. We're recruiting a lot of paladins. We'll probably, I don't know, we'll see. If we have enough time and we manage to get out enough paladins, we'll probably aim to go somewhat wide against Asphodel with smaller groups rather than, these large armies, although we may try to do both. We'll definitely need at least one large army, to crack forts and things like that. But we're definitely getting to the point in the game where, a giant army of humans makes me pretty nervous. And this player has killed a giant army of humans, one of my giant army of humans before. So yeah, we'll see exactly what form our attack takes. But that's still at least a few turns off. We are pulling our forces off the border. I think we're just going to walk them instead of spending the Astral Pearls because, we're going to have, like I said, at least 3 turns, more like 4 or 5 turns for them to get into position. So I don't think there's really any need to gateway. So we're pulling the troops off this border. Abyssia, of course, is gone now, and we have a non-aggression pact with Man. And since Man said that they were planning on attacking Asphodel, pretty secure in this border. There is a monster boar here. I was thinking that it was a site causing all this unrest, but then I remembered to check the chronicles, and there's a monster boar here, so we'll have to figure out. This is actually a fairly valuable province, so we're definitely losing a good amount of money. I was tempted to, just use the armies, or this army, to patrol here, but I don't think it's worth wasting the time, so we may actually generate some wolves over here, and then use them to patrol out the monster boar, who are a real hassle to patrol out, because all the unrest helps block actually de-stealthing units. In terms of artifact forging, I'm not sure if I mentioned, but Ulm has construction 8, and they have forged a few of the artifacts. So we are officially in a race right now to get artifacts. And this turn we are forging this tome, Igor's tome, and this helps with Corpseman construction. Let's see, this thing right here. So pretty huge bonus. It's also not that expensive. The only catch to this is that we do not actually have anyone that can make corpse constructs yet. But we have 2 locations where potentially we could get someone who could make corpse constructs. So these shamans can random into air death. It's not incredibly likely, but we are going to be popping these out pretty much every turn. So eventually we will get one that can make them for us. And then the other thing, I switched back over to the blood mages, but we will probably recruit a couple more of these sorcerers of the sands, again looking for that air death cross path. So I was planning on waiting on the tome until we actually had somebody that could take advantage of it, but now that we're racing against Ulm, I do think that this is probably worth it. Although that said, our air gem income is not great, and we're pretty low on air gems, and Corpseman construction takes air gems, but it is a really efficient chaff generation mechanism. They're also undead, so they can go underwater, which it could be relevant for us. So we'll see. Maybe a waste of time, but I do have high hopes that we'll get good use out of it later in the game. So I think that covers the majority of at least the important things that we're up to. Also of note in terms of what we've caught from our scouts, there's a large Agarthan army moving out. I'm assuming it's headed towards this fort, which is under siege, although it has not been cracked yet. And this is a force from Ariu, and there is a Queen of Thunder here, so some of the elemental royalty Ariu has gotten, and that also means that they have Conjuration 8, so pretty good research as well. And they are also using Great Eagles for siege strength, so kind of surprising that this fort hasn't been cracked yet. Might be stuffed with stuff, or possibly the Great Eagles just arrived. But I imagine this Agarthan army is headed out to relieve this fort, so we're going to try to catch that battle. And then in terms of large armies, the only other one that we see here is from Shiniyama, and we're not really sure what they're up to. I don't know what their diplomatic situation is. I'm guessing that this maybe is just going to cover the throne, and they're also possibly looking to get involved in this war. Like I said, I think if I were them, I'd be a little bit worried that, Ariu would target me next. But they also may be thinking that, like, hey, this is a good time to jump in, and grab some territory from Agartha. So we're going to try to keep an eye on this army. We'll see. Maybe it heads home. And then, of course, there's the Yisian Doom Stack, which just took this fort, which we saw. We're just going to, try to get out of dodge so we don't get patrolled away, especially because this is, one of our special scouts that we had to use death gems on. So we're just going to jump on the throne and, see, like, okay, what is Yis defending it with? I'm expecting that there's probably not going to be much there, but if they have two doom stacks moving in, that would be good to know about. And then we can keep an eye. I imagine they're probably going to jump on this fort next, although they may decide to go for this palisade, but we'll probably just hang out on top of this throne and wait until we see a Yisian flag on top of this fort, because we of course definitely want to keep an eye on that. But Pelagia is not out of it. They definitely still have a good amount of territory elsewhere, so we don't really see much in the way of armies, but we also we only have the one scout over here, so we don't see much in the way of anything. But it doesn't really look like Atlantis has been able to make a lot of inroads, so I'm kind of assuming, we've seen Atlantis kind of up here, so I'm assuming, do we even know where their capital is? No, it would appear that we do not. So I'm assuming that, Atlantis' capital is probably somewhere, around here. You can see that, our underwater knowledge is pretty weak, but still, I would have expected if this war was going really, really badly for Pelagia to see, some Atlantean flags down here, and we're not really seeing that. So this war probably has at least a few more turns, probably more like 10 turns, especially considering the number of forts that Pelagia has. Which is, of course, really good news for us. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 61.